Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Today I will talk about Jean-Jacques Rousseau, the philosophical genius who shook the 18th century. We will discover the secrets of his shocking and miraculous life, which are never told in history textbooks. Surprising facts that defy common sense await you. Chapter 1. A Turbulent Childhood. Rousseau's life is like an epic novel in its own right. Born in 1712 in Geneva, Switzerland, the son of a watchmaker, Rousseau's mother died early and his father did not love him enough. At the age of 10, he was banished from his hometown after a quarrel with his father and began a life of wandering. What is remarkable is that he taught himself to read and write. At the time, it was considered nearly impossible for a child to become educated on his own. He spent many nights in the library, reading books, and taught himself to deepen his knowledge of philosophy and literature. The young Rousseau moved from one occupation to another: musician, writer, tutor, secretary, and so on. He worked in an aristocratic mansion while simultaneously deepening his own learning. These seemingly disparate experiences would later become the source of his innovative ideas. After leaving home at the age of 14, he converted to the Catholic Church, returned to Protestantism, and worked as a music teacher, always pursuing his own possibilities. He lived a free and flexible life, like a modern freelancer. Thus, Rousseau's life was a series of setbacks and reinventions. However, this very experience of hardship became the starting point for his later revolutionary social theory and human observation. His criticism of aristocratic society, his thirst for equality, and his passion for education. All were born from his stormy life. Chapter 2. The Secret of Love and Family. Now, I will discuss the most shocking and contradictory aspect of Rousseau, his children. The fact that the philosopher who spoke so passionately about child rearing and education in his Theory of the Social Contract actually left all 5 of his children in foster care. What in the world does this mean? Rousseau's relationship with his partner, Thérèse Levasseur, was also highly unusual for the time. They chose not to marry, but to have a de facto marriage. They lived together, and one after another, they placed their children in foster care. Considering the social context of the time, this was not at all unusual. Many children suffered the same fate due to poverty and social prejudice. However, for him, who later preached the ideal of child rearing in his educational treatise, Émile, this appears to be a major contradiction. Rousseau himself deeply regretted this decision. In his late confessional book, Confessions, he wrote nakedly of his guilt and anguish at having given up his children. "I loved my children," he wrote, "and that is why I chose the best path for them. That is why I chose to do what was best for them," he insisted. Interestingly, his abandonment of his children was not merely irresponsible, but was imbued with deep thought and criticism of society. He made the choice of foster care to protect his children from poverty and social prejudice. His action was also a challenge to the social system of the time. He argued that society, not the parents, should decide the fate of the child. Ironically, his decision for the children was the prototype for the social welfare system that followed. Chapter 3. The True Face of Music and Literature. In this issue, we will explore the unexpected talents of Rousseau, known as a philosopher, in the world of music and literature. In fact, Rousseau was a highly regarded composer as well as a leading authority on music theory at the time. The new musical symbolism he developed was a revolutionary event in the history of music. In 1742, he presented a paper on "Did the Progress of Science and Art Promote Moral Corruption?" at a paper competition sponsored by the Dijon Academy. The paper was highly controversial and made him a household name. Remarkably, he was only 30 years old at the time. In music, too, Rousseau showed exceptional talent. His opera, The Village Fortune Teller, is still highly regarded as one of the most important works in the history of French music. His musical treatise, Dictionary of Music, revolutionized the world of music. In the field of literature, he also achieved great success with his novel New Eloise. It was a bestseller at the time and had a major impact on Romantic literature. Although it was a love story, his work, which delved deeply into social criticism and human emotions, had a profound impact on readers. Furthermore, his autobiography, Confessions, was a groundbreaking work that laid bare the inner life of an individual. He wrote honestly, including his own faults and weaknesses, creating a style that was revolutionary at the time. For Rousseau, music, literature, and philosophy were all means of understanding human society. Through his art, he sought to express essential human emotions and the contradictions of society. A versatile genius. That was Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Chapter 4. Behind the Revolutionary Thought. Ladies and gentlemen, this time we are going to get to the essence of Rousseau's revolutionary thought. His ideas were not mere theories, but had the power of a bomb that shook the society of the time to its very foundations. Rousseau's most famous work, The Social Contract, was a groundbreaking work that fundamentally criticized the absolute monarchy and aristocracy of the time. The shocking passage, "Man is born free, but everywhere he is in chains," was truly a challenge to society. At the core of his thought is the concept of the general will. He insisted that the will of all the people should be the basis of government, creating the prototype for today's democracy. What is remarkable is that already in the mid-18th century he was calling for equality and freedom for all human beings. Particularly noteworthy is his educational theory, Emile. It was a revolutionary educational theory for its time. It emphasized the natural development of the child and advocated education based on the child's interests and abilities, rather than forced education. This has had a profound influence on modern pedagogy. It is interesting to note that while Rousseau called for full equality, he held contradictory views on the social status of women. In Emile, he limited the role of women to the home, a position that is criticized from today's perspective. His ideas became one of the ideological sources that directly inspired the French Revolution. The three major slogans of the revolution, liberty, equality, and philanthropy, were the very ideas of Rousseau. For the ruling class of the time, his writings were their most feared ideological weapon. In fact, The Social Contract was banned immediately after its publication, and Rousseau was persecuted. He was exiled from Paris to Geneva and then to England, and was always considered dangerous by those in power. However, he never compromised and remained true to his convictions. Rousseau's ideas are not mere theories. It was one of the most important ideological turning points in human history, fundamentally transforming society. Chapter 5. Darkness and Solitude of the Spirit. What I will discuss is the story of Rousseau's anguish and loneliness behind his brilliant achievements. The second half of his life is characterized by persecutory paranoia and intense social isolation. The process by which the philosopher, once respected by many intellectuals, is suddenly regarded as an enemy of society seems like an epic tragedy. In 1762, after the publication of The Social Contract and Emile, Rousseau was severely persecuted. These writings were declared heretical by both church and state, and he was banished and sometimes ordered to burn the books. He was constantly pursued to Paris, Geneva, and England. Mentally, he gradually began to suffer from persecution delusions. He believed that his friends were betraying him, and he isolated himself from his former close associates. The philosopher Jean-Jacques Rousseau literally became a lonely man. His break with Diderot, an Enlightenment thinker, was particularly symbolic. Once close friends, their ideological conflict and mutual distrust led to a complete breakdown of their relationship. Rousseau's Confessions was an astonishing autobiographical record of this process in naked detail. In his later years, Rousseau spent his days in solitude, sheltered in the estate of the Countess de Chevreuse. His mental state became increasingly unstable, dominated by paranoid thoughts. His friends considered him insane and he was completely alienated from society. Yet, despite this loneliness and anguish, he continued to write. The Dreams of a Lonely Walker is one of the most personal works he wrote during this period. It depicts his alienation from society and his deeply spiritual search for harmony with nature. Until the end of his life in 1778, at the age of 65, Rousseau remained confronted with his own ideas and critical of society. His life symbolizes the solitude and courage of an intellectual in pursuit of truth. How was it? If you liked this video, please like and subscribe to our channel. See you next time.